So welcome again to the No Filter podcast by me, Rob Jupp. The No Filter podcast is a very honest human nature series trying to bring out really amazing human beings and talk about their stories and what made them the person that they are. And why No Filter? Well, as the many of you that have been kind enough to watch previous episodes will hear me say, it's because my children always say to me, Dad, you've got no filter. But actually, probably, it's because the guests I elect to interview also have no filter, which brings us very neatly on to a man with absolutely no filter, Bharat Sagar. So, Bharat, for the benefit of the thousands that won't know who you are, that listen to this podcast or watch it on YouTube, can you talk to us a bit about who is Bharat Sagar, what's your career been, your career journey, and where are you now in terms of a human being as such?
So I graduated from university as a biochemist, which I was absolutely shit at. So couldn't get a job doing it. Ended up getting a job selling advertising space. And
what year was that?
That was going back to 1984.
Okay.
And the day I'd finished my sort of, the training, which I was due to start on a very glamorous magazine called TV Weekly, which went to the broadcasting trade, right? And it had a big team of salespeople, some phenomenally attractive women. And on that day, some guy from some really boring magazine run by two old guys called What Mortgage left, and they went, "You're going on there." And I thought that was the end of my existence. But the reality was, I've never looked back. Sorry. The magazine at the time was trying to attract advertising from Ideal Home, furniture manufacturers, Dulux Paint, etc. I said, but you're called What Mortgage? Why can't you get mortgage brokers to advertise? And I said, do you mind if I try and get these other people to advertise? I went, yeah, knock yourself out. Sorry. And I started doing that and quadrupled the revenues in 6 months. Did that for 2 years, and then officially I left, and then a few months later decided to start our own magazine with a couple of really good mates who'd also worked there. And so that was in January 1986, so 40 years ago.
Was that the start of Matching Hat? Was that Matching
So that
Hat?
was Brass Tacks.
Okay.
So Brass Tacks was the first company we started. There was 5 of us. 2 of us specialising on the mortgage side. Other people were on the contract publishing side. They had contracts with British Airways, Open University, etc. 10 years later, you can't have too many chiefs, and everybody fell out. Me and Andy I didn't fall out with everybody, but people fell out with each other. So me and Andy Stewart, my sort of business partner, bought the other guys out, and this was in October 96. I went and borrowed £1 million from Bank of Scotland, bought the other guys out and started Matching Hat, and then started building our own suite of mortgage products, which in 2001 we sold to Incisive.
So at that point, those publications were Mortgage Solutions?
No, the Mortgage Solutions was Incisive's. It was Link, Your Mortgage, and a whole host of work that we were doing with the likes of Legal and General, Mortgage Trust, and people like that. Okay,
so Solutions and Mortgage Edge came about later on.
Yeah, so Solutions and Mortgage Edge came along later on. Yeah. Mortgage Solutions was always an Incisive title, which when we were bought by Incisive, was merged into what was a larger mortgage division.
And then you started again.
Well,
A3 Media.
Well, what happened was I've always been very lucky, right? Not only with the people I've worked with, but our earnout, because we were bought out for some money and an earnout, finished in March 2007 when I then went part-time. And then 2008, the bottom and virtually other large bits of the mortgage market fell on.
Everything, yeah.
And so at the time, we had Mortgage Solutions had 40 pages of advertising every week, right? And within a month or so, that went down to about 5. And we had to reduce a team of about 45, 50 down to 15. It was very difficult. But, with the help of people like Ian Cartledge, who has always been amazing, we did that, and we kept the core magazines afloat until 2013, when a deal opportunity happened where, because we had a great team and I knew Ian Cartledge could lead it, we approached Incisive, who wanted to reduce their costs, and said, we'll take 75% of the mortgage assets off you and start again, leaving them with 25%. And so we started AE3. And again, because we were now more motivated, focused on it, it was ours, and we had a great team with Danielle and other people on there, and Jamie Hurst. We quintupled the revenue in 4 years, and then managed to sell it again.
To Mortgage Brain.
In 2017, with an earn-out that finished March 2020.
Well, okay. So, yes, I understand why you might consider yourself the luckiest man on the planet as a result of it. So when I first met you, my first impressions of you were, and that would have been about 2006. That you were brash, you were outspoken, you were certainly foul language, Indeed. But you were extremely bright, one of the brightest persons I'd at that point ever met. You were certainly uncompromising, and you were maybe a little bit of an intellectual snob. Was that the real you? Because I think probably a lot of those things you'd have to accept, and we're talking about not 2026, we're talking about 20 years ago. 20 years ago, was that you? And the second part of the question is, do you think that you had to behave differently because you weren't like almost everybody else in the industry, i.e. you weren't white?
There's a lot of truth in what you say. So yes, I've always liked swearing. Right, I find profanity comforting. Right. It's an offensive weapon. It's a defensive weapon too. And then you are right. I wanted to be seen as not just the bloke with the turban. So if you're not going to be seen and defined by what you look like, you have to be somebody that will be remembered for something else. And if I was going to be remembered for being loud and being brash, right, then fine. And if the opportunity to do that was quite simply saying the occasional fuck, right, then so be it. There's also a certain sort of intimacy that in a sales situation, sat over lunch with you, if I swear and you don't immediately look funny, then we have a relationship which is at a different level to what it was before I just swore.
Okay, interesting. So if you were starting your career now, do you think you would have to make the same personal sacrifices of Bharat Sagar now at 21 in 2026 to what you did 30 years ago?
I think not.
We'll go on to talk about Diff in a moment.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the world is a little bit more understanding. There's more people that look, well, not exactly look as ugly as I am, but there are more sort of non-white people in positions of power. But also, I think some of my behaviours and some of the things and the way I spoke, where I would, try and push the boundaries linguistically. Not that I didn't have the vocabulary to express myself in other ways, but much of the language I used would be totally inappropriate now. And on the occasions that, from either habit or lack of control, I slip into that sort of linguistic behaviour, I not only regret it myself, but quite rightly am pulled up by people about it, and I have to agree with what they say.
Okay, well, yeah, times have changed. Going back again to 2006, I remember getting this invite through for. I mean, I think at the time the only awards in the industry were probably the Morgan Strategy Awards. Got an invite through from this lunatic who said he'd hired the Royal Albert Hall for a brand new set of awards that were going to be the biggest awards that the mortgage industry were ever going to do. And I thought, this guy is a lunatic. That was the first BMA, which I think were there for 3 years perhaps.
Yeah.
Was it 3 years? What on earth made you take the gamble on such a prestigious but expensive venue on your first awards?
So
That's proper pioneering stuff.
well, it again, it's luck and happenstance, and again, a very, very good team of people, Ian Cartledge and others, who really we came up with the awards. And it was the fact that the Royal Albert Hall approached Incisive and said, Incisive used to have the Royal Albert Hall for 2 days for the Fund Manager of the Year and the British Insurance Awards. And Tim Weller came up to me and said, we've just got it for the third day for nothing. Somebody's pulled out. So you've got no costs on your P&L, right, to come up with an award which will warrant being at the Royal Albert Hall. But you've got to get sort of revenue to cover X, right? So we looked at all the awards there, and actually one of the great things that one of the people that I most admired in the world is Stephen Knight, and I know you did too, told me that what you need to do is to look at a market and do something that all your competitors aren't doing. And I was very much taken with the fact that every other award went to companies. And ours was probably the most people-related industry in the whole of financial services, and relationships are very important. And I once heard one of our competitor awards, which are sort of somewhat minimised now, call themselves the Oscars of the mortgage industry. And I went, well, you can't be the Oscars of the mortgage industry because the Oscars go to people, they don't go to companies. And it was from that idea that the team sort of built the idea for the British Mortgage Awards, an awards program that would actually celebrate the great achievement of the people in the industry and not simply be a badge of honour of the companies they work for.
But I think some of your ideas sometimes, I always thought there must be some sort of, I don't know, toad that had acid on his back, or you just all took acid, because some of your ideas were so out there. You know, I remember one year there was a discussion about there being Zeppelin balloons coming down and attacking various tables with sponsors on. And I used to love sitting with you because I was thinking, this guy is even more barking than I am, and that was saying something.
Well, we were given license to be barking because in those days, Rob, we had a load of lenders that were trying to outdo each other, but trying to make a mark by being more outrageous and amazing than each other. And that gave us the license to go to all the lenders out there and the people that you know, who some of whom aren't here anymore, with the most out there ideas. And we would look at what other industries were doing that weren't as sort of like straight-laced as mortgages. We'd have a look at what was the travel industry doing, what was the catering industry doing, what were their awards like? Oh, they did this. They actually had a cake with a logo on it and sparklings and all that sort of
there.
stuff.
I mean, Mortgage Edge magazine was wonderful. It was exciting. We used to get it because it wasn't talking about the boring subject of the mortgage industry. It was talking about human nature, human content stories, caricatures of people.
Yeah.
I decided to be an entrepreneur and a pioneer because I had a Pioneer stereo stadium. I'm going to show you a picture now. You come from a family of pioneers, and just to describe the picture I'm just about to show, because 4/5 of our viewers are not on YouTube, there's a picture here. It's a black and white picture of a Sikh gentleman with a police car behind him. Can you talk me through that?
So that was my dad, and my dad was a social equality warrior and a scholar, and this was the result of one of the campaigns he led for religious equality in the country, fighting against a change in the law where Sikhs, everybody had to be mandated in wearing a crash helmet. And my father believed that it should have been the choice of the Sikhs. If X million Sikhs could have fought for the British and died in 3 wars, then it should be their choice if they wore a crash helmet or not, assuming that they managed to get the insurance. I mean, it was no danger that you had people taking risks on other people's behalf. Yeah. So what my father did to protest was to buy himself a moped. He was in his 60s. He was asthmatic. He was a diabetic and never ridden a moped before, rode a moped, got arrested. Didn't pay the fine, went out again, rode a moped, got arrested. In fact, the police knew exactly where he was, right? So the fines built up to the point where, despite the mayor of Manchester offering to pay his fine off, my father refused and ended up spending a week in Strangeways. He was interviewed when he came out of prison, got back on the moped, garlanded in flowers, and got arrested again. But
which is that picture there?
Is that picture there?
Okay.
And
so that's him coming out of prison.
That's him coming out of Strangeways and getting back on the moped.
In fact, you can actually see Strangeways behind, can't you?
Yeah.
Right.
And eventually, a year later, through a private member's bill, there is an amendment to the bill which says, as long as you are a full Sikh with the turban, top knot, the whole kit and caboodle, you've got the appropriate insurance, you can ride a motorbike without a crash helmet.
It did the same thing for bus drivers as well.
Did the same thing for bus drivers as well. But one of his other campaigning things, which is the one, in a way, I'm most proud of, simply because of the tenacity and intellectual rigidity of the man. He took on Robert Maxwell and the Encyclopedia Britannica because sometime in the 60s, they said that Guru Nanak, the first Sikh guru, was a disciple of a Muslim philosopher called Kabir, which my father, from a scholastic perspective, totally disagreed with, asked them to prove it. They couldn't prove it. He said, can you remove it? And they said, well, no, we can't, because who the hell are you? He carried on writing to them for the next 15 years, twice a week. We've got a box full of letters at home between him and Robert Maxwell.
So he wrote to Robert Maxwell twice a week for 15 years.
Yes, say, change this. This is why I should change it. I've written to you before, change this. And eventually, in the 80s, it was changed. They dropped that bit.
What an amazing story. So, yeah, I know for a fact that you're a committed family man. You know, your beautiful daughters, twin daughters, Anna and Ella, your lovely wife as well. And the man that they see every day and they experience every day is not, in the main, brash, outspoken, foul language. He's still very bright. He can be sometimes uncompromising. So how are you different? Because I made the decision many years ago to decide not to go out with you with a group. I preferred you on a one-to-one because I felt I got the real you rather than a lot of bullshit you. What is the real you, Bharat?
I suppose the real me, I'd like to say, is somebody who's got a strong moral compass. I like to do the right thing. I'd hate doing a business deal where I feel I've got one over on somebody, because I just don't think it's good business. Good business has to be when both parties win. And one of the only reasons, though, I have been successful is that's been the main reason of working. So, you know, I like to have interesting conversations. I like to be entertained. I like to entertain people and be funny and let people entertain me and enjoy their humour and wit and conversational expertise. And that's me. It's somebody I just, especially at my age, I just want to enjoy myself.
But I spoke to a colleague of yours that's been on the journey with you for over 2 decades, coming into very much into the third decade. And she described you as one of the most loyal people. In fact, the most loyal person she's ever worked with or ever met. Do you feel uncomfortable by?
Well, yeah. It's one of the things that I'm particularly not very good at, and that's taking praise. And I suppose and I think you're a bit like that too, Rob. Right? Some people are just not good at it. But I think loyalty is really important. There are people that have worked with me for over 30 years, but as a name check, some of the people like Ian Cartledge and Jamie Hurst and Danielle Ovenden. They're amazing, and they deserve they deserve any loyalty, and it's always been a team effort. Nothing's ever been just me, right? And I don't like the idea that some people think that mortgage stuff is just you.
Okay, that's a really interesting comment you made earlier. What is it about praise you don't like? The insincerity that it often comes with it, do you think?
I don't know. I've never really analysed why I'm uncomfortable with praise.
Well, let's do that now. We've only got a few thousand people watching.
Well, there you go.
So it's okay.
I suppose it comes from the fact that one creates a persona that doesn't warrant it, or perhaps from a defensive perspective doesn't need it. And so when it comes, you don't know how to deal with it. So you don't know what to say, and it feels like enormously egotistical to say, well, I know, of course I am. I suppose because at the very core of being the way I was brought up, humility is a big thing. It just doesn't look like it is because you're loud and brash. But you said who's the real you? Part of the real me has humility as a core asset.
And one of the things that you wouldn't necessarily say about you when people first meet you is you're also one of the most sensitive people around, right? You care. You care what people think about you. You care what people who you care about think about. And how do you deal with the inevitable disappointment of people letting you down?
You just have to crack on with it, really.
It's tough though, right? It's tough.
It is tough. It feels like when you sort of when you invest a lot of time and effort and emotion in people, and that is either not given back or distorted or used, then it feels like a physical wound. But wounds heal, and you just have to overcome it.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned Stephen Knight, the late great Stephen Knight earlier, and the industry was changed massively by him and others. But would you? So we're going into the dangerous territory of compliments here again. So this is a compliment warning to you. Okay. Do you see yourself in the same light as a Stephen Knight?
No, because we were always an observer of the mortgage industry. We were never really we never made any products, we never advised any clients, but we facilitated some amazing people that did that. So there are people that are unsung heroes that changed the market. Stephen Knight changed the market. I think people like Tony Ward, when they brought over flexible mortgages, made huge shifts in the market. What John Garfield did at John Charcoal when he took a broker brand and actually made it into a brand. So there was the first, and even no matter how big or small John Charcoal are, it's still a memorable brand.
So I disagree with you. I think that you are entirely in the same bracket as those industry icons. Recent additions to the alumni industry icons would include people like Brognicki, David Whittaker, but you as well. I mean, let's just stop and reflect on all you've achieved, but bringing things forward. I know that you said that your wife Jane said one of the biggest legacy items is what you've done with diversity and inclusivity. Yeah. So why, it's a stupid question, but stupid questions require intelligent answers. So why Why did you start that? Because some people might say at the time you were the person least able to lead that sector. Okay, the elephant in the room. Let's talk about that. So why did you start this?
So again, I want to make it very clear that the Diversity and Inclusivity Finance Forum isn't me, and people think I started it. I really didn't. The reality is I just helped it evolve. It came from an idea or something that Paula John and Vicky Hartley, two wonderful editorial people that I have worked with for a very, very long time, they were doing women in mortgages, and they were having lunches and scrabbling together for this. And they said, look, can we make this a thing? Can we have more money for better speakers, better venues, and all this sort of stuff? I said, well, we can, right? But we are in an earn-out, so it does have to fund itself. So I came up with a way, and it was called the Women's Executive Finance Forum at the time. Of people would pay to be members, and we would use that money in order to get venues and get speakers, and that was great. And that's what we did, and it was theirs, and it was as much Ian Cartledge and Danielle Moore as I did, who then created that. And because some of the bigger lenders said it's a bit focused on women, if you really want to get traction and get us to contribute more for more members from a wider variety of people, you need it to be everybody. You can't just be the gender agenda. There's got to be race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, neurodiversity, all of those things have got to be in there. And that's when, after 2 years of the Women's Executive Finance Forum, we evolved it into DIF and the Diversity and Inclusivity Finance Forum. And it really isn't just me. I just was the person that took it to the people, spoke to people like you, spoke to people like Brothers and NatWest and Santander, and said, this is what we're doing, you do it.
But
so
you have you have the pitch that makes people feel entirely uncomfortable to say the word no. And that comes from years and years of but there's some massive taboos that you've talked about, and you've got people in the industry to talk about, and thank you and well done for that, because I think your wife is right. You'll have a number of legacies, but this is certainly one of them. And for the record, you are the best man to have led this area, and for all the reasons we've talked about. So it's perhaps a bit of a surprise then when I look to try and find alternative media interviews that you've done in the past. There just hasn't been in it. You are, for someone who's so charismatic and out there, you're not terribly good at talking about yourself in this sort of forum. So why has it taken so long? Did I just get lucky?
No. Nobody asked me, just in case I swore. Or whatever, I don't know. Nobody ever. Again, it comes from the fact that we, as I said, we've always been observers of the industry and served the industry as best we could. We've never, in a way, not actually being a lender or an advisor, we've never actually been part of the industry in the way of actually doing the job. So we've always reported on it, advised it, helped the people, and we've done some great things and seen some amazing people develop. So I remember very clearly getting a lift back from the Senate from Peter Brodnicki and having a conversation with him and say about, well, I need to be out there a bit more, don't I? Yes, you do, Peter. You're amazing. You need to go out there and people need to know you. Because up until that point, Peter was very reticent. He just did his job. He was running a fantastic business, but he didn't want to stand up and shout from the rooftops.
No, he's a natural introvert. He's not.
And that was, and I've known him very well since that one trip, which I remember very clearly. And again, I remember having a lunch with you where between the two of us and possibly more very excellent white Burgundy than is necessary at a lunchtime, inventing the Specialist Lending Senate.
Yeah.
And that's the keystone of AE3's whole specialist lending portfolio, which is still the very, very best one in the market.
I remember getting a couple of sponsors following that lunch on the speakerphone live. Do you remember that?
I do indeed.
Don't tell them I'm here, sort of thing. Absolutely wonderful. Well, I think more the pity that we haven't had the Technicolor, Bharat Sagar. So in terms of your legacy, we have the Bharat Sagar Lifetime Achievement Award. Was that uncomfortable how did that come about?
Well, it came about simply because I thought, I don't want a plaque or a thing. So when I went down to 1 day a week, I was asked, do you want anything? Right? Should we give you something at the BMA? I went, no. What I would like, incredibly cheekily, quite egotistically, but why not as part of my legacy, seeing as this was an award scheme that was partly invented under my auspices, was why can't I have... You don't have to be dead to have an award named after you, and I thought that would be really cool.
It is really cool, and it's the biggest accolade that anyone in the industry is ever able to get.
And once you look old enough, Rob, we might consider you.
Well, I do look old enough, but I'm certainly not within that bracket of amazing entrepreneurs that have won that and come before me. So in terms of...
the first winner was Stephen Knight.
Well... I remember that. I remember the event very well. I remember sitting next to Alison Hutchinson in the Royal Albert Hall, and I think it was the second. Was it the second BMA where the temperatures were ridiculously hot? I mean, the panna cotta was melting in the plates and whatever. Was that the 2007 one?
I think we did 3 there, and the second one was really, really, really hot. And I think that we sold Ian Giles and Kensington, I think, the sponsored fans for the next year, and it was bloody cold.
It was, yeah. I remember you had the year I was fortunate enough to win my first BMA. It was Al Murray, the pub landlord, and going on stage with a bloke with a pint on, as dressed as a bus driver stroke publican, was just hilarious, absolutely hilarious. But they were really edgy, and you're really edgy, and probably, if I could just bring myself a little bit into this, at times, I felt you've been my difficult person when I've been struggling with some of my mental health, and you're loud and you're brash and everything else. But actually, I think now you've got a real refreshing part of humility that actually gets lots of people. Maybe that's a lot of living, maybe that's the diff thing has brought in a lot of other people's stories, and that's made you reflect and stuff. But certainly, do you know what? One of my close friends said about you. He said, "I really love Bharat, but he's a bit of a transactional friend."
Not a completely unfair comment. I think it's one of these things that so. You should always keep your business stuff on LinkedIn and your personal stuff on other social media, whichever other social media you use. And so in terms of, there are several people that from the industry that are personal friends, and my friendship with them from a personal level is outside the mortgage industry. Right? And so very close relationships. I've got many with people in the mortgage industry, and the amount of time I can spend with them and the opportunities I get to spend with them are directly related to how much work we're doing together. So from that perspective, somebody can say, well, we haven't done this and that with them, so I hardly ever get to see him. Well, that's because there's nothing wrong. I don't dislike you. It's not personal, but it's a time and opportunity basis.
And you often have told people that as well. You don't spend enough of me. I'm not speaking to you.
Well, that's sort of partly.
It's comedy, but it's hilarious when you do it.
It is only partly in jest. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So your legacy is you've got 2 wonderful daughters. You've got the Bharat Sagar Industry a Lifetime Achievement Award. You've got 40 years worth of achievement in the industry. Bharat Sagar, you are a pioneer of the modern mortgage industry. Whether you want to believe it or not, you are a pioneer of our industry, and you will always be remembered as one of the main pioneers of our industry. And I'm really comfortable that you're uncomfortable by that, but it needs to be said.
But I do want to say part of my legacy is also people like Jamie Hurst, Ian Cartledge and Danielle Moore, who will be part of this industry for the next 20 years after, I'm long gone, or whether that's permanently or just by actually genuinely retiring. So the people that have worked and allowed me to do some of the things I've done are as much part of my story as anything I've done myself.
I've gone down I'm trying to read this without glasses. It's not terribly easy, but I think I've covered certainly everything I wanted to cover. But is there anything you want to cover that you want me to cover? Because here's your chance to do it.
The only thing, we spoke about my dad.
Yeah.
Right? And my dad was, a great man and on Wikipedia and did great things. The rock in our life was my mum. And I think particularly in South Asian cultures, often what the women do is overlooked. And my mum bought, and it wasn't me, but two of my sisters and two of my brothers, took us 6 months during Indian partition to bring them from over the border in Pakistan. She was in a refugee camp set up by the British because people were being killed. She spent time on top of a train and to make sure that her children weren't taken. She never slept for days. Every night she would plait her hair into their hair so that if anybody moved them, she would know. And there's lots of stories about her, and there's some very which I'm happy to share with you another time. I do think that one of the things that I've done through DIF is the story of women is nowhere near as well told as the story of men. So
we talked about your dad in great detail because, as you rightly point out, there's a digital footprint there, and there wouldn't be a digital footprint from your mum. But from what I'm hearing from what you're saying here, your mum is arguably a bigger influence on you, the person that you are today, than perhaps your dad was.
Possibly, but then I also reacted against my mum a lot more.
But that strength of character, I mean, what an amazing story.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bharat, for being an amazing guest for our No Filter podcast. It's
and you were too nice.
Well, I am too nice, but there's a surprise for many people. But this whole series is really a busman's holiday for me. It's a wonderful opportunity to ask the questions of the people that I do respect, and I feel that their stories that I've been privileged to understand and be told, a lot of them should be told to a wider audience for the sake of heritage and history of what we do. So until the next time, thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for future editions with some equally as exciting guests coming down the pipeline. Thanks very much indeed.